All right, what's up, everyone? It's Zach, and today I'm here with a very special guest. I'm here with Shawna Thibodeau. Shawna, how are you doing tonight?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, glad to hear it. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, and thanks for taking some time to talk tonight.
No problem.
Awesome. So, for those of you who do not know Shauna, she is a really cool person. She's a meditation and breathwork teacher, also a mental health nurse. And then something that I find really interesting is she's really passionate about coaching others to help them feel and live as though they're living their best selves. So that's a little bit about Shauna from like a surface level. But do you mind kind of going a little more in depth about your background, who you are, what you're doing these days, all that good stuff?
Yeah, for sure. So I started in the field of mental health in nursing, and I was a full-time nurse for about 8 years. And then what I found was I wasn't quite able to bring in my passions into nursing in the way that I wanted to. I really fell in love with meditation back when I was 24 and became a meditation teacher, but I found that nursing didn't quite present the opportunity to bring in these teachings and these passions, not in the way that I really wanted them to be a part of it. So then I started getting ideas as to how I could teach these valuable skills to others, almost like on my own terms and my own basis. And so I started to get really interested in entrepreneurship from a young age as well. I started exploring it around 24 years old and just dipping my feet, learning about how you could set up a business. I started learning about the coaching world as well. And then it really just became evident that that might be the better way to go about teaching skills to other people. So I got my meditation teacher training, and then I started to just shift into coaching based on kind of like the counseling background I had through mental health nursing. I just shifted it into coaching services, which the great part about that is you get to work with the clients that you want to work with.
Yeah.
And from there, I'm always simultaneously on my own healing journey. So basically, when I find things that super work for me, then I try to add it into my coaching practice. So I found breath work, got certified in breath work, and added that in. And then I created my own online programs for clients, basically based on everything that's helped me with my own mental, emotional, and spiritual well being. So that's kind of how it all originated.
I love that. That's so awesome, and it's really cool to hear that as you are growing personally and individually, you're also evolving the ways that you're able to teach and coach people because you're taking that information and applying it and having others try it as well. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And when you were talking about your background and how you pieced everything together, I really liked that you referred to things like meditation and breath work as skills. And, as someone like yourself who's obviously in the field, like that makes a lot of sense. And I'm super passionate about mental health and things like meditation and breathing. So it makes sense to call it skills. But I feel like a lot of people almost take it for granted and don't realize that those are skills that are important to have and things that we do have to practice like any other,
Mm-hmm.
skill. And if you don't practice it, you can get behind in it or you can just neglect it. And, obviously we all have to breathe to live, but how many of us are actually breathing properly throughout the day?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
Awesome. So, when it comes to tying it all together with the business and being an entrepreneur, a lot of people I've talked to in personal conversations and through this podcast, people kind of say, if you can mix your passions with business, sometimes that can be great. Sometimes it can make the passion almost kind of decrease because it becomes work. Have you ever
Mm-hmm.
struggled with that?
No, it's been the opposite for me,
Okay.
actually. Yeah. I find one of like the biggest benefits of having these passions as my work is that it keeps me committed to it.
Hmm.
So a backstory on that was basically I got into meditation myself because of my own struggles with depression and anxiety back
Okay.
when I was 22 and I was in nursing school and I
Okay.
was really struggling with depression and anxiety. And that's when I found my first meditation teacher, my first meditation class, and I took a 8-week program with him. And basically, after that 8-week program, I found so many shifts in my own mind. But then after you complete a program, then you're kind of like left on your own to do the practice, right?
Right.
And the risk is like falling off the wagon, basically,
Hmm.
which I'm sure everyone has experienced. And I found that when I would fall off the wagon, then symptoms would start to reemerge. And I kind of realized that based on either like my genetic predisposition or my family history, because we're prone to depression, anxiety, and maybe a little bit of my personality type, maybe even things like astrology, stuff like that.
Hmm.
I just kind of realized that I need to have these skills a part of my lifestyle in order to maintain my mental health. And then that almost motivated me to bring it into my business even more, because if you're doing it every day with clients, you're reviewing the skills every day, which is
Yeah.
great. And you're almost like practicing them with other people. And it just keeps you also accountable. Because I'm also very, like, I really believe if you're a practitioner, you need to be practicing what you preach. So I
Mhm.
just automatically feel guilty if I'm not doing my own skills. So it just motivates me to keep things up. And I literally love all the topics that I teach. They're everything I'm so interested in. So for me, it doesn't feel like work. Like each day, it doesn't really feel like I'm going to work. I'm just like waking up and doing what I really love.
That is incredible, and I love hearing that because, yeah, like I said, I talk to people and know people that say like, "Oh, I went after my passion and now I don't really like it as much," and it's really, I guess, reassuring and also just nice to hear, from your experiences that it just kind of makes the passion even stronger, and you're getting that practice in daily, whether it's for yourself or with your clients, and it's cool that, you have that feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome. So, when it comes to coaching others to have them feel and live as they're living their best selves, like, how do you define what your best self looks like? Or how do we know if we achieve that or when we achieve it?
That's a great question. Um, for me, my best self, it definitely comes down to emotional health,
Okay.
because I'm naturally a sensitive person. And like I said, prone to things like depression, anxiety. So I can tell that I'm at my best self when I'm not like ruled by my emotions anymore.
Mm,
And when I experience greater like peace, joy, and also things like self esteem and empowerment, like when I'm making decisions that are more based on what's good for me and not giving my power away to other
yeah.
people. Yeah. So it's kind of like a mixture of all these things and then following my purpose and my passions. So all those things together really for me create my best self. And it's funny because as I said that, it like includes the curriculum of my program. So
I
I
love
was
it.
like, oh yeah, that's like
Yeah.
purpose and passion is also a module. So yeah, that's kind of the work I do with everyone to help them get closer and closer, because it is ongoing work.
Hmm.
Every, say, week, every month, every year, if you keep up with it, you can slowly shift into what's closer to, say, your best self.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think, you brought up a good point that it takes practice and time and it's a slow journey, right? Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
something we can expect, we take one class or, we practice for 1 week and then the next, day, week, whatever, we feel instantly better or, transformed. It takes a lot of time. And I think that it's, again, just like any skill, you have to invest into it and really be patient with the results.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people kind of give up too
Yeah.
quickly. Mm-hmm.
How long would you say, like, going off that, like, how long would you say someone should try to stick with these kind of practices to
So
see?
basically, yeah, basically, I created mine to be 3 months long. So I really say to people, try to commit to practices for 3 months before you judge anything,
Okay.
before you're like assessing, is this working? Is this not working? And it's funny because I did used to work with clients kind of on like a one-off basis, like you could book one session, right?
Yep.
And then I just realized I'm like, this isn't the work that I want to do. This really isn't serving them as well,
Yeah.
because you need to really stick with things for a minimum of 3 months, I say. And then I usually work with people for 6 months to really just continue the work. And you almost go through different phases. Like you're really excited to do the work in the beginning, right? It's new,
Mhm.
fresh. It's like
Yep.
something to look forward to. And then the lull kind of starts to kick in around like week 8. But then that's why I continue to work with people, because I'm like, we have to work through these lulls. We have to
Yeah.
experience the lulls and experience the practices when they're no longer super exciting.
That's really powerful, like, to experience the lulls, and I think that that just kind of relates to life in general, like, we have these high moments in life, we have low moments, and then we have, like, kind of the lulls, the in between where it's not really
Yeah.
that bad, it's not really that good, but it's just like that, like, middle steady state, and we have to enjoy those experiences as well, and I guess just be present in those moments just as much as we would in the highs that we experience.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just going to add, because you said kind of the time frame as well. I
Mhm.
find like my personal journey started when I was 22 and I'm 32 now. So
Okay.
that's a 10-year journey. And it's just interesting because when you stay on the path, it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper, which they say
Yeah.
like a spiritual journey is like a spiral, right? And you're just
Mhm.
going deeper, deeper, deeper. You're shedding different layers every year. So for me, I've kind of looked at it as like, we don't want to look at it as a time frame you need to commit to. I've tried to like infuse it into my lifestyle so that it's always an ongoing process that's happening,
Yeah.
but in like a non-stressful way, right? Like we don't
Right.
stress ourselves out about it.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's really cool, and it's interesting because as I hear you say that, I think back to my kind of experience with, these kind of practices and kind of like a spiritual journey, and I would say I was probably 22 as well,
Mm,
when I first started, and I'm 25 right now, 26 in a few months,
hmm.
getting older, I don't like it, but, no, it's cool to see how I've changed perspective and mindset just in, like, the 3 to 4 years that I've experienced it, and I look forward to continuing on my journey and seeing, 10 years later where I'm at or how much more, like, I guess, almost automatic or just organically weaved in, I've made it a part of my life.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, so when it comes to your coaching and, you know, these practices, whether it's meditation, breath work, I'm sure that you have like a way that you specifically coach and teach, but there's of course other ways too. Do you think that when it comes to coaching, do you try to coach like a specific style and that's kind of the way that it goes? Or do you find yourself having to like adapt to individuals as well?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question. I like to follow a structure. I'm
Okay.
I'm a structured coach, I guess you would say.
Okay.
Because some coaches they're like, let's just see what the client brings this
Mhm.
session, and then they kind of go from there. But I really like to follow a sequence. So I have it all laid out as to what they read each week, what practices they focus on each week. And this is because a lot of my coaching is learning a lot of things. I
Mm.
introduce a lot of different concepts. I've done a ton of reading myself, and I love to teach what I've learned basically. And I like to bring in information from, say, psychology and from like clinical mental health. So I
Yeah.
bring in that information and then I fuse it with like spiritual wisdom and emotional health as well. And so it kind of follows this sequenced step by step plan, but then I'll meet with them every other week privately. And that's where the personalized approach can come in. So
Mm.
we really talk about what's going on in their life. And then we try to apply whatever practices are in the modules that they worked on, we try to specifically apply it to their life. And that's kind of how it unfolds.
Yeah. I like that. I'm definitely just in general a structure kind of person, so I really appreciate the structure piece, but also in those, one-on-one touch bases, also having the chance to personalize it depending on what that individual is going through or where they're at in their journey. I think that's really cool.
And then over time, I can kind of see, okay, this person's really struggling with self-esteem, or this person's really
Yeah.
struggling with self-love. So then I say, if I would focus your practice on maybe these practices.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that, and, the whole theme of our conversation so far and what I anticipate the whole conversation in general being about is just it all kinda comes back to, like, just our mental health, and I think that it's so important, and it's something that sometimes we neglect or sometimes as a society we don't always talk about or value, but, just as important as it is to go for a run or to, lift some weights, I mean, you can argue it's even more important to work on your mental health and take care of that as well.
Like basically, your whole life originates from your mind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the quality of your life is going to reflect the quality and the perspectives that you hold in your mind.
Exactly, yeah. So, when it comes to taking care of our minds, is there, other than meditation and stuff like that, are there other things that we can be or should be doing regularly or just every so often that could help take care of our minds?
Well, the things that really helped me with my own mind is inner child work,
Okay.
which involves, and I use a theory that's called internal family systems,
Yeah.
IFS. And it's basically starting to learn about how your mind almost gets ruled by past wounds,
Mhm.
and it creates what's called limiting beliefs
Yep.
and like almost like wounded perspectives of viewing the world. And this is where we might start to view the world from a place of like it's a scary place,
Yeah.
or I'm not good enough, right?
Right.
And these perspectives, what we don't realize is how much they affect us, our lives, our behaviors, our choices. So we dive deep. I dive deep into that with my clients, and we start to uncover like the themes and the patterns that the mind is holding. And then we really work on healing those things and shifting perspectives.
I really like that. That's a really good approach in theory, and just hearing you kind of walk through it, it makes a lot of sense to me. And I will say that I did my undergrad in psychology, so
Mm.
definitely stuff that I'm passionate about and familiar with, and I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I think to people who might not be familiar with the field, it might not think about kind of the limiting beliefs that arise from past traumas or from experiences when we were extremely young that they
Hmm.
kind of manifest and maybe something happened when you're 3 years old and you're 20 and it impacts you deeply but you don't really understand what that trigger point is or why it's even occurring.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So with those limiting beliefs from your coaching experience and stuff, that you've, done in the field, is that something that we can learn to completely overcome, or are the limiting beliefs something that we learn to just kind of quiet down and to manage, or can we actually get away with those beliefs?
I would say a little bit of both.
Okay.
Um, Being from the psychology field, you're probably familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy
Yep.
and exposure therapy as well.
Mhm.
So, exposure therapy is used a lot for anxiety and for fear.
Yeah.
And basically, the whole idea is that if there's something that we fear, and say it's like leading a class or something, I'll use that as an example.
Okay.
And if we have this big fear of leading a class or, say, becoming a teacher of some sort, we want to ask ourselves, okay, what would be the beginning step of that? What would be like 1/10 of that? And it might be
Mm.
like, I don't know, going out with someone new and maybe talking about meditation or something, right? Like
Sure.
explaining to them. So that might be like step one. And you create this like step approach all the way up to 10. 10 would be, say, leading a class.
Yep.
And what you want to do at each of those steps is you want to notice the limiting beliefs that are coming up, the
Mm.
distorted thought patterns, right?
Yeah.
And we want to work on shifting those in the moment. So, literally, as you're going out with this friend to talk about meditation, you might have some anxiety coming up and you might catch these limiting beliefs. So, you want to work on it with that lower grade activity, basically. And I also teach clients EFT tapping,
Okay.
emotional freedom technique, which is really good for anxiety. So it's
Okay.
basically tapping on your face on different points that line up with the Chinese meridian system, and it's sending a calming response to your nervous system. So basically, you would think about going out for dinner with this friend, and if you feel anxiety, like prior to going out, you could do a tapping sequence and you
Yeah.
could think about shifted perspectives that you want to think in. And then you
Mm.
want to try to get yourself to that, say, dinner and actually speak about the meditation. And that would be overcoming step one,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Right.
And then once you've done that, you gain some data, basically, is what I like to call it, data that you were able to work through that and you were able to accomplish that. So the more data that you accumulate, then the more you can start to do these bigger things that scare you because you know that you got through the smaller ones.
Right.
And so, just a practical example of this is even with becoming a coach myself, because in the beginning I was terrified, right?
Right.
And I was like, who am I to be a coach? Like,
Yeah.
is this going to be useful for other people? Can I even do
Yeah.
this? And I had to work my way up through steps like that. But as you work through them and you get feedback from, say, clients or participants, and they say that was really good, that really helped me,
Mhm.
you're developing this bank of basically like positive feedback that
Yeah.
then your beliefs also naturally start to shift because you're like, ooh, these are distorted beliefs.
Yeah.
Like, people are actually telling me that I'm like good at this and that I'm helping. So then new beliefs start to form and then they overrule the limiting beliefs.
Yeah, I mean, that's very powerful, and, to anyone listening, I think that what Shauna shared was really cool that, a lot of us experience that imposter syndrome of, we're not good enough, we're not qualified or, whatever, and even hearing Shauna say that, like, that's how she felt when she started coaching. It's like, even if you have all the background and the skill set and, the ability and the passion for it, it's still pretty easy to doubt ourselves and to
Mm-hmm.
have those limiting beliefs. But I think that, like you said, we build that bank of kind of positive reinforcements, positive affirmations that others tell us that then we can recall those, conversations or that positive feedback, but we can also kind of affirm with ourselves, like, yeah, I do know what I'm doing, or like I am, providing value to these people and others are seeing it. So I think that that's really cool to hear how you kind of overcame it personally in your journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they also say like you have to just step into it and
Yeah.
become it, even if like with being scared. Because I remember
Hmm.
like when I shifted into coaching and I like created my program, I literally had to like go on walks and say to myself, like, you are a coach now. Like, you are a coach.
Yeah.
I had to basically tell myself, and you just literally have to step into it. And
Yeah.
it's terrifying.
It is. It's kind of like how people say, like, jumping into the deep end of the pool.
Mm-hmm.
Very scary, but you kinda have to do it eventually, and like you said, just step into it and embrace it and, kind of almost manifest it in
Mm-hmm.
itself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Definitely. So, I don't necessarily wanna get too much into it because 'cause I'm sure it's something that's ever present in our lives, but I am curious with the, pandemic that's been going on, have you noticed an increase in just trauma that people are experiencing or just even a shift in the kind of, like, industry of meditation and mental health work, or has
Mm-hmm.
things I guess, like, what's that experience been from your frame?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's this concept that's called the dark night of the soul. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I don't think so.
So it's a spiritual concept that basically we can go through these different periods in our life where we're suddenly like brought to our knees basically,
Okay.
and we start to like question what's the meaning of life, what's my purpose.
Yeah.
And it can be accompanied by feelings of depression and anxiety. And what I found is that the pandemic has triggered this for many people.
Mm,
So I did find the people that would come into my programs would say, kind of like a contributing factor has been the pandemic, and it's made them,
okay.
it's almost like it's kind of two pronged, like the stress of the pandemic has affected them, but
Sure.
then it's also like because the world slowed down, they had more time. When we slow down, all this stuff can come up, right? Stuff
Yeah.
that we've been pushing down for a really
Yeah.
long time. So I found that that is what the pandemic has kind of brought out.
That's interesting, and I think that going off kind of what you're saying about, like, when things slow down, some thoughts or limiting beliefs might come up. I think that another thing that a lot of us have experienced is just with the isolation that the pandemic's
Mm-hmm.
caused when you're almost forced to sit with yourself and your own thoughts, which
Mm-hmm.
can be great, but also can be super destructive sometimes if we, you know, let our thoughts run away from us. It can be very tough and very emotionally draining to just sit in that silence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So, when it comes to meditation, it's something that I personally practice. I enjoy it. It definitely took me a while to get into the practice. And I think that anyone that wants to start the practice almost is like, I don't know how to do it, or I can't do it, or, I sit there for 5 seconds and I'm already thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner or what homework I have or what, I have to do for work, whatever. Is there any tip or advice or suggestion that you have for people who have maybe said, like, they've tried to meditate, but they can't do it or they can't figure out or don't know how to do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I get that. I hear that a lot when
Yeah.
people say, oh, I can't meditate. I'm not good at it.
Mhm.
But when they say that, what's happening is they're misunderstanding almost the purpose of meditation. So the
Mhm.
purpose is to train our minds and to train our attention. So it's almost like it's equivalent, say, to when we go to the gym, every bicep curl that we're doing, we're strengthening that muscle, right?
Right.
So meditation is the same thing where, and instead of doing a bicep curl, it's actually when the mind wanders and we bring it back. That's the bicep curl.
Mm.
So we're actually training our attention, and it doesn't matter where you start. So it doesn't, and what that means is it doesn't matter how busy your mind is,
Yeah.
because the main instruction that you have to stick with is just when the mind wanders, just notice that it wandered and then come back to your point of focus. And no matter how many times that happens in one meditation, just keep noticing and keep attempting to bring it back, right? And then
Right.
you're meditating. But I think it's challenging when you're trying to when you're trying to do this process on your own for the first time, like in, say,
Yeah.
your house or your apartment with no one, maybe just an app, kind of makes it challenging because it is a challenging practice. So when
Right.
those feelings of like, this is so hard, I can't do this, when those feelings come up, we start to judge ourselves. Pretty much what's
Mhm.
happening is our nervous system's getting triggered and all those limiting beliefs are like starting to pour in, right?
Right.
And this is an uncomfortable experience. So we will turn off the meditation and we'll say, I'm not good at meditation and I don't know how to do it, basically.
Yeah.
So what I recommend people do is if they really want to learn it, try to find like a live class to go to
Okay.
or a program like a I started with mine was called MBSR,
Okay.
mindfulness based stress reduction, and it's a well-known 8-week program. And that was my intro to meditation. And we did like, I think it was like 45-minute sittings. So that
Oh,
was my
wow.
introduction to meditation. And basically, no matter how much you want to stop, you're still sitting in the class, you know?
Right.
So you
Yep.
just have to keep going and keep trying. And I think that's what created the, say, success with it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's kind of important, just like you said, kind of with the time frame and timeline for the coaching and just working with meditation is that, give it time, and it's not easy. It's not an
Mm-hmm.
easy practice, but once we get the hang of it and get comfortable with it, it becomes easier eventually. So just kind of
Yeah.
stick with it, and don't give up. And I think just know that everyone struggles with it when they first try to get into it. So
Oh, yeah.
you're not, on it. You're not, you know, doing it wrong or incorrectly because you feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, something that I wanted to ask you is, since you have your experience as a mental health nurse, and then you're also a coach and teacher with meditation, breath work, um, do you think that for someone, and I'm sure it's, an individual basis, but do you think for someone that might be struggling with things like depression, anxiety, or just these limiting beliefs, do you think like a perfect combination of maybe some clinical counseling as well as working on meditation, breath work is the the best way for that individual to process and to kind of push through the trauma? Or do you think like in some situations maybe if you just can go into spirituality, maybe mental health counseling might not be as helpful, or maybe not something that you need to do? Like, do you kinda get what I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting at on
Yep.
that? Okay,
Yep. And I think it's different for everyone, and
sure.
that's really what they need to explore. But I think they need to be willing to
Yeah.
explore different things and figure out what works for them. Because, say, I know some people who definitely needed, say, antidepressants to get them out of maybe an unsafe place or
Yeah.
a very depressed state. So for them, it was much needed. But for me, I found that the side effects of antidepressants were too much for me. So
Mm,
I decided not to go that, like after trying them, I took them out and I decided to commit to other things. And it's funny because I actually tried counseling first, but that didn't super resonate with me. And then I moved into meditation and spirituality, and that really resonated with me and got me like shifted my mind to a point where I have been back to counseling at different times, and it almost made me more willing to
yeah,
understand those things. And I've definitely, because say CBT and shifting thoughts and things
yeah,
like that, that comes from like a counseling perspective. And
yeah,
now even more counselors are doing things like inner child work.
yeah,
Um, so I think just exploring and trying different things, which I know takes time, but that's when we kind of have to ask, like, how important is our minds and our mental emotional health to us?
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think that that's just so important to be open to different experiences or be open to different approaches. Like you said, it can be very time consuming. It can be very discouraging too.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, what might work well for me might work terribly for you and vice
Yeah.
versa. So, we're all individually different. So there might be things that resonate a little differently. And I think, kind of to that point is sometimes maybe a hybrid approach of multiple different things might be the best for
Mm-hmm.
you. So, just having that openness and willingness to explore the options out there, because there certainly are so many different options available these
Mm-hmm.
days to consider.
Mm-hmm. And you may have heard this before, but some, say, counselors or therapists, they say, like, don't seek out another therapist while doing treatment with one, right?
Right, right.
And I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah,
Maybe it's like, I get what they're saying. If you're doing like two therapists, that might get, say, complicated and intrude on
sure.
the process. But I don't necessarily agree with it in terms of that it needs to be your only modality, because I've worked with a lot of clients that have therapists at the same time, and they're picking things up from their therapists, and then they're learning things from me, and then they're like creating these beautiful insights and these kind of enmeshment of just understanding and practices.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'd agree with you on that. I think that sure there might be some instances where, like you said, kind of having like two therapists might blur the lines a little bit or might be a little counterintuitive, if you will. But I think that the more kind of practice and resources and techniques that we're utilizing, I think that we can really benefit from that, and we shouldn't limit ourselves in that
Mm-hmm.
approach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, Shauna, to anyone that's listening, and maybe they find our conversation really fascinating, or maybe they're listening to us and like, oh my gosh, this sounds great, but like this doesn't make sense to me, or I don't know what to do. Do you have any advice to anyone listening about what maybe they can start with or initially kind of like dip their toes in if they want to explore spirituality?
Hmm. Hmm. I'm trying to even think where I would get people to start. I've heard a lot of people read The Power of Now by Eckhart
Yeah,
Tolle.
it's a
It's
really good
funny.
book.
Literally, so many people where I'm like, when did your spiritual journey begin? And they're like, when I read The Power of Now. So that's a book that I
Yeah,
would recommend to people. But if people are wanting to dip their toes, again, I would try to look up a class and not just like a one-off class. Like try to find a group that meets at least for say 4 weeks, or there's something like 6 week or 8 week, because I really believe you have to dip your toes in a spiritual journey. You have to really like commit to a few weeks to just open
yeah.
yourself up to these ideas. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. I
Hmm.
love it. And I will admit that I would say Power of Now did kind of start my journey a bit. Power of Now and The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak
Mm,
Chopra were the
hmm.
kind of two first introductions I had. And I just love reading in general. So I read those, and that's kind of what made me feel, I guess, that state of awakeness and have that, shift in mindset and being present. So um,
Hmm.
I will say that those are good books to check out, but,
Yeah.
yeah, that's funny that you kinda hear that a lot and,
Yeah.
with others. Awesome. So, excuse me, Shauna, um, with your client work, are you currently taking on new clients?
Yeah. So basically, how I run it is so my signature core program is called Radiant Mind Academy.
Yep.
And I run kind of two different versions of it. I run a group version where we do the program I run it 3 different times per year, and it's 12 weeks.
Okay.
And so that's meeting every Wednesday, and it's online with a group, and we go through week by week the sequences or the modules. And the other version is basically in between, like if a group round starts but people are wanting to get started and they miss the start of the group, then I basically start with them privately and we work through the program privately, and then they're included in the next group round.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm kind of always taking on clients, and it just depends on where I'm at with the group versions, if they start in the group or if they start privately.
Okay. Perfect. So, in addition to that, do you have any other focuses that you have with your coaching, or is that kind of like the main program, that you're taking on clients for?
Yeah, I have technically three different
Okay.
offerings. So a side passion that's included in RMA, but I wanted to dive deeper into it, was manifestation and law of
Mm,
attraction. So I
okay.
have a mini like do it yourself course on that.
Okay.
And then the second branch of coaching that I do is actually entrepreneurship coaching now,
Mm,
because I've just, it was funny because I think I got to a point where sometimes you realize you don't know how much information you've accumulated about
yeah.
the area.
Yep.
Because people would start asking me like, how'd you do this, how'd you do this, how did you create this, and I'm like, oh, you just do it like this. And
Right.
I didn't realize that I had this like body of knowledge that would be really useful to others. So now I also coach mostly wellness entrepreneurs
Okay.
that are wanting to step into their business, create some services and offerings. And that program's called Build Your Passion.
Build your passion. I love it.
Yeah,
Right
since it's
it
about passion.
exactly, right in line with me in the podcast. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you have coaching for meditation and breath work, the Radiant Mind Academy, um, which does the group and individual coaching, and
Mm-hmm.
then you have this entrepreneurship coaching, which is more so towards, wellness entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
and then the manifestation,
Yep.
which is also individual coaching.
Yeah, that one's like a
Okay.
do it yourself.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, very cool. So, 3 very awesome different offerings and coachings that I think that if anyone is listening and they want to learn more about any of those. I think Sean is a great person to connect with and reach out to and see if it's a good fit and if you can work together. I think that all of those are super important areas of our lives. Like we've obviously talked a lot about meditation and breath work, and then just I'm a big believer in manifestation and the power that can come from just the way that we think in our daily lives. So that's something that I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure is it's its own kind of just awesome, liberating kind of state to get into. And
For
then
sure.
with entrepreneurship, I mean, we're in the age of technology and social media and kind of entrepreneurship. So definitely, you've had a lot of great success with your businesses. So I think that another area that you have tremendous value to provide people with.
Thank you.
Of course, of course. So I know you're pretty busy with everything that we just mentioned, but do you have anything maybe that you're focusing on for the future or any goals for this year or anything big on the radar?
Yes, so I'm writing a book currently,
Okay.
and that has been the idea popped into my head. I've kind of subtly had it for a while, but
Yeah.
the idea and topic of the book popped into my head in November of 2018.
Okay.
And I started writing it in 2019. But like we talked about falling off the wagon,
Yeah.
2021 was, I kind of put it on the back burner
Sure.
and then realized that it was staying on the back burner. So I've pulled it out and I actually hired a coach, a writing coach, because
Okay.
I truly believe in coaching and the accountability of it. So I hired a writing coach back last November and now we're really making progress on it. So that's good.
That's awesome. Okay. I like I said, I love reading books. I also
Mm.
am an author myself, so
Oh,
I have
cool.
a yeah, so I have a lot of appreciation for people writing. And as soon as that book comes out, I will be reaching out to you to get a copy
Ah,
signed from you.
I was
Hopefully,
gonna
if we
say
can
you
make
can have
that
a
work.
signed copy.
Yes, I would love to. I have a little bookshelf that I try to collect, signed copies of books that are really meaningful or that have something that is really of value to me. So I'd love to add your book to that collection once it's out.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome, perfect. Um, well, Shauna, as we're wrapping things up, is there any kind of last thoughts, message, word, piece of advice that you want to give to anyone listening today?
I would just say that if people are in like a low place or a place of struggle, I just encourage them to start seeking out just opportunities that they think might help. I think that's the key
Mm,
is like we don't know what's going to help, so we have to go into everything with just that exploratory attitude. But
yeah.
if something is like an idea like, maybe this meditation class might help, it's kind of like a nudge nudge to really go check it out because you don't need to stay in states of struggle and it can take a bit of time to get out of them, but we kind
Hmm.
of have to start somewhere, right?
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. We have to start somewhere, and sometimes the hardest part of the process is just that initial starting point.
Oh,
So
yeah, that is the hardest part. Yeah.
yeah. So definitely don't be afraid to walk into it. Kind of take that leap of faith, if you will. And again, I want to definitely say that if you find yourself in that situation, maybe Shauna is a great first place to kind of step into it and see if her coaching might be something that could help you, or even maybe you're not comfortable or able to commit to coaching right now. Maybe just connecting with Shauna on a personal level or checking out what she's about. I think could be very beneficial, and someone that is very welcoming to people newly getting acquainted to the community.
That's great. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, of course. And on that note, so to anyone that's listening, if they want to connect with you, Shauna, what's the best place for people to check out what you have to offer and just check out everything you have going on? Is it going to be your Instagram or website or?
Yeah, I would say either my
Okay.
Instagram or my website. So my Instagram's just my name, Shawna Thibodeau. Um, the spelling's kind of hard, Thibodeau.
Okay.
And then my website is the same, shawnathibodeau.com.
Okay, perfect.
I'm
So
also on TikTok, but I'm not super active. I try to be, but
okay,
it's tough.
it is. That's a whole other beast.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, so Shawna Thibodeau, on Instagram, and I'm assuming that's the TikTok as well?
No, actually,
Oh, okay.
on TikTok, it's healing with Shawna. And I think there's
Shawna.
periods healing dot with dot Shawna.
Okay,
Hmm.
perfect. So TikTok healing dot with dot Shawna Thibodeau on Instagram, and the website shawnathibodeau.com.
Yeah.
Um, everything, all that, all the socials, I will also put in the description of this episode. So if you didn't catch us chatting about it, just go to the description and check it out that way. But definitely give Shauna a follow if something we talked about resonated with you. Reach out, let her know that you heard her on the podcast and that you loved, her story or what she's doing. Um, but again, yeah, definitely just it's been a pleasure talking to you today, Shauna, and thank you for taking the time and for all of your kind of passion towards these really important fields. And it's really cool to hear your own journey, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for you as well.
Thank you so much, Zach, for having me. That was a
Of
lot of fun.
course. Awesome. Well, thank you again, and I will talk to you later.
Yes. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.